there's so much of Kamala's culture and family that is just poignant throughout the whole series. And in this final episode, we get that moment where it's just like, yeah, Kamala Khan is Miss Marvel.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast spoiler-filled discussion of Miss Marvel Episode 6. This is the season finale. My name is Daniel, and joining alongside me today are my fellow... I don't even know what to call you guys today. I was going to call you guys something, but I was like, should I go spoilers right out the gates?
I knew it. I knew you wanted to.
You can call us Mr. Marvels.
My Mr. Marvels.
Mr. Marvels.
Yeah, my Mr. Marvels. That's a good one, Anthony. My Mr. Marvels. We'll start with Shahbaz. Hello, Shahbaz.
Hola.
Okay. And Anthony. Hello, Anthony.
Hello.
Shay, I thought you were going to say something a little bit more, connected to the world of Miss Marvel. I think in our first review of the show, we kept like challenging you with different words and like different numbers is the word I was looking for. Numbers of that you could say for us to teach us. So I'm surprised you went with the Spanish today.
Assalamu alaikum to all my brothers and sisters out there. I hope everyone had a great Eid as well.
Yeah,
how's that?
Too.
How's that for you?
That's perfect, and I hope everyone did have a blessed Eid as well.
That's on the nose, I'd say.
That's where I prefer it, is on the nose. That's great.
Since watching Miss Marvel, I just been calling Shay Beta. Beta.
You have been, and I've been very confused by it. Yeah.
No, because I just think it's an endearing term, and I think it just fits your stature and trying to be diverse for you. You always say ciao to me, and I always say I love you, Beta.
Yeah, you do. It always confuses me because it's so heartwarming that I'm like, what happened to Anthony?
Yeah, I should be hating this guy right now. It's amazing that here we are finally at the end of the show. It's been a pretty amazing 6 weeks. I think every week watching the show, every episode we've been like, the show's special. The show's really special. This show's special. And here we are at the very end, the season finale, episode 6. This show is very special. Miss Marvel is a very special show, and the future of the MCU is very bright with Iman Vellani in it. There's so much to talk about regarding this episode, so we're going to get to it very soon. But of course, as always, you can catch a brand new episode of the Movie Podcast every single Monday. And watch out throughout the week for our review episodes and our interviews on all the latest movies and series. Make sure you follow us at The Movie Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. And don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, join our Discord, and write into the show at hello@TheMoviePodcast.ca. You can check out our show notes for all of those links and more. There's lots of great interviews and reviews that you can listen to right now on the Movie Podcast feed. Some regarding this very show that we're about to talk about. We were so lucky to have Kamala Khan herself, Iman Vellani, join us a couple weeks ago on the Movie Podcast to talk about working on the show, what it means to her. We had a great time talking with her. We also had the directors of episode 1 and the season finale we're talking about right now, Adil and Bilall, join us to talk about bringing the show to life. They are some of the most passionate and just energetic people we've ever spoken to, and I just remember us having just a ball talking to them. Like as soon as we joined the room, they're like, "Hey, duos!" And it was just like such a heartwarming thing. Their energy is infectious, and I think if you go check out that episode, you will see exactly why. And of course, all the other great reviews and interviews that we have right now. We've been really lucky to have some incredible guests join us, and we have a lot more coming, so stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's get right into this episode. And of course, if you couldn't tell from the title of this episode, it's full on spoilers. We're not holding anything back. So if you've made it this far and you didn't hear any spoilers yet, be warned. We're about to go full on spoilers. But I want Shay to start us off. Shay, give us your first reactions to everything that happened in this final episode of Miss Marvel.
So, I'm going to start off by saying that we got up at 3 a.m., Daniel, you and I, to watch this episode.
We did.
So, a lot of me watching this episode was me trying to wake up as well. I'll be honest, within the first 30 seconds, this episode was like a jolt of adrenaline and kicked me right into being awake.
Yes.
So, it's funny because I didn't know how they're going to end the show. Obviously, I never know how they're going to end the show. But this show took a point to make it so connected and so grounded, yet also still so just cute. Like, it was just very cute because I just felt happy the entire time watching it. The fact that they do this whole high school home alone type thing with the DOA agents was phenomenal. I think that there's a lot of heart in this show, and there's so much of Kamala's culture and family that is just poignant throughout the whole series. And in this final episode, we get that moment where it's just like, yeah, Kamala Khan is Miss Marvel. And then we find out even more about her. There's great action sequences. There's all this love that's put into what her name is all about. And then obviously we have the post-credit sequence as well. But what I love about this show, what I love about this episode, sorry, is that we kind of get Kamran in a very interesting position here where, he's battling now with his demons of losing his mom that he doesn't know he's lost yet, but he knows that something's kind of going on here, and at the same time he's trying to protect Kamala as well. But those two ideas clash, and you see that internal struggle throughout the episode, but it's all done so beautifully. Sometimes what happens with a lot of TV shows, and it's been the case with some of the Marvel ones, where the last episode feels like they're trying to put in so much story at once. This kind of just felt like a national progression of where the story would go. It made sense, we have her family kind of figuring it all out now, because obviously it's pretty much out in the open. And then you have this, the community of New Jersey, or this area of New Jersey at least, supporting her and backing her as their savior, because they don't really have that superhero in that city. This episode is beautiful. Um, Iman Vellani solidifies herself, and we get a lot of great surprises and teases that we expect from Marvel. So that's what I really loved about this episode.
I love it, and you mentioned a lot of great things there that I want to talk about. I think one of the first things that really stood out to me is something that we predicted back in the first couple episodes, is that you know Kamala's mom is going to be the one who makes her suit, and it reminded me so much of Superman. Because Superman, like Martha Kent, is the one who, in the comic books and a lot of media, is the one who makes Superman's suit, and he goes on to become a symbol of hope for the world. And I love that. We're seeing that parallel here with Kamala's mom, who made her suit, which is so cool looking, and it incorporates her like her logo, and then her colors, but also her culture. And I think that's so cool to see that. And I love that. And I love that this episode was also a bit of a reversal of expectations, where in a lot of, in the previous Marvel shows, we get the hero fighting some type of, the antithesis of themselves, or the like an evil version of themselves. We saw it in WandaVision with her fighting Agatha, in Moon Knight when he was fighting um Ethan Hawke's character, and then we saw it in Falcon and Winter Soldier with the different super soldiers, and so we've seen it throughout different shows, where it's like, oh, we're just going to battle an evil version of themselves, even in the movies, right? So it's nice that we got, instead of Kamran doing a villain heel and becoming the villain. I liked that he, kept his redemption, I guess, from the wedding episode, where he was, cast out by his mom and his people, and he actually had to go to Bruno for help, and he had to go to, these to Kamala's family for help to get out of there, and the Department of Damage Control were the villains in this, and I really liked them being the villains of it. And there's a lot of great moments in this episode, where they're going to the mosque, and they're like, everyone already has their IDs out. You know what I mean? And it's just almost like a middle finger to the Department of Damage Control for always like, go. This is where you start first. You know what I mean? When you're looking for someone.
What I loved about what you mentioned there with Kamala's mom kind of getting her the suit made was that it is typical Pakistani fashion that as soon as someone goes to Pakistan, or anyone, I think this is probably the case for a lot of cultures, but you always get clothes made for yourself there. So, and it's very apparent, like anytime anyone in my family goes to Pakistan, they come back with like, oh, we made this suit specifically for you, and it only costs us like a penny. Like it's always that kind of attraction that always happens whenever you get people to go to your country. So I love that it wasn't just like her sewing a suit for her at home. It was like, no, while we were there, I went to a store and I kind of got this made for you. Like this is what happened. And it's like, yeah, that's very on brand for how you are as a Pakistani. Like that happens all the time. I've gotten many a shalwar kameez made right from there, and none of them have my logo on there, though. That's the unfortunate thing. They don't want to print my logo, but it's probably because it's copywritten. It's just a Coca-Cola symbol. That's all it is. But
okay, interesting. You could have used the movie podcast logo. I mean, we would have allowed that. We would have agreed to
but
that.
this was before the movie podcast.
Okay. Well, now we have something to look forward to next time we go. But also, there's some also veiled but also not veiled moments of just like the racism that you see when it comes to, Islam in the United States, where we have that Department of Damage Control agents say like, oh, this is what happens when the wrong people get powers, and then the person like the other agent's like the wrong people, and she's like, oh, kids, like just like to almost like correct herself. And then there's also that moment within the mosque where um uh someone like says a quote and they're like, oh, is that from the Quran? And they're like, no, it's from Abraham. It's an Abraham Lincoln quote. So there's just a lot of great moments where we just see that just Department of Damage Control is so focused, or this woman from the Department of Damage Control is so focused on getting her target, she doesn't care whose rights she's jumping on. Anthony, jump on in here. What are your first reactions to the finale of Miss Marvel?
This whole season, I had so much fun with it. And I think because it wasn't your typical superhero series or film, it was really about family and it was really about diversity. And, this series doesn't go above and beyond in terms of the spectacle of a Marvel series or show that we were so used to. It really kept it grounded in the sense that here is a character that's getting her powers for the first time, and just how she deals with it, how she deals with her family, how she's dealing with school. And they didn't need this huge villain, and that's what I liked about this series is there was no huge villain for her to like conquer at the end. I think it was just her finding herself. That was like, I guess, her villain in this whole series was her finding herself and dealing with her family trying to be that person that her parents want her to be, but then not being that person. That's what I loved about this whole show. It was just so simple, but it's also complicated in the sense that I don't know what it's like to be a teenager nowadays, and I definitely don't know what it's like to be a teenager with superpowers. But Kamala Khan and Iman Vellani, those two personalities just make Miss Marvel, and I think that's where I'm at with this show. I just had so much fun. It's the last episode. There are things I'm surprised they did, especially with and I don't know much. I only read the first volume of the comic, but the idea of like a lot of people know her identity is interesting because now it opens her up to you know her friends knowing, her family knowing, even her brother and sister-in-law. They all know her identity, and that can lead to big villains knowing who she is. And Kamran being this conflicted character who I wasn't too sure. I didn't like him in the beginning, and I don't know how I feel about him still, just because he seems to be in the middle when it comes to good and bad.
Yeah.
And you can see it in his eyes, and you can see it in how he throws his powers around. And I'm curious to see where he goes in the future. All the other characters, Bruno, her friends, is just they all fit in with what the story was trying to tell, and I really, really, really enjoy it. And then there's that surprise ending, which we'll talk about. But I think overall, the biggest thing for me was the family aspect, and that's where I related to the character and I understood, and I think family is important. And just like Spider-Man, which is I want to say she's the modern version of a young adult, like Spider-Man was that modern version in the 60s and 70s. Kamala Khan is that version of Spider-Man nowadays, and so is Miles Morales, just being a young person dealing with powers, living in this world. Doesn't have to be earth-shattering consequences to their story, and they pulled it off, definitely.
And that's the thing, jumping off on your last point there, Anthony. It doesn't have to be world conquering consequences, but when it's something that's a personal story to them, it's their world, right? And I love that this show, really dives deep into that. And when we talk about Spider-Man stories, the best Spider-Man stories are always the ones that are Peter Parker stories, and they're intertwined that way. And I think that very much is the same thing with Kamala Khan in the season, where she is battling her identity, her heritage, where she comes from, but also, she's in the superhero world and she wants to be part of that. And she also gets, kind of lost in that. And, Shay mentioned it earlier, it was a really fun moment where we're in the high school and we're seeing her friends come together, we're seeing her family come together, and they're all pulling these kind of like Home Alone-esque stunts in the school, trying to distract the Department of Damage Control agents. And I think that was just so cool seeing them all work together. And then there's definitely some conflict between Kamala and Kamran, where we're like, are they gonna fight, are they not? And I was like, I really don't want them to fight. But then you see some sweet moments between them, and there's definitely tension between the two of them in terms of them wanting to, like, of him not trusting her not trusting him. But at the end of the day, she does what a hero does, and she saves everybody, right? And I love that we see that moment of her just creating this big just energy light shield for him to escape. And then she goes Kamala Khan from the comic books. And this is what we were talking about in our very first review of this show, is that we think we're going to see the progression or the evolution of her powers? And then we hear her say "EMBIGGEN," and we get the Kamala Khan that we know from the comics with the MCU twist of having the light, having the big hands, giving the peace sign. Like, it was just such a cool moment. Shay, I want you to jump in. What was that moment like for you seeing that?
Look, I think, in the comics, the way that they show off her powers is great. But it always to me felt a little cheesy. It almost felt like to me that it wasn't fully developed. Like, it was like, this is an idea that we've had in Marvel before, but now what they did was they had the liberty of time, and they had this availability of so much to pull from, that they were like, yeah, we can make this what it was, but also something new. And I love that marriage between both these different types of styles and powers, and we get something that honors the comics yet also pushes the comics forward. Anthony, I know you had your hand up for something you wanted to say as well.
I wanted to say that the community aspect of this episode was like just on point. It just fit the personality and the character of the show. It did remind me of Miles Morales' Spider-Man from PS5, where like the community played a huge factor, and it does play a huge factor, especially in these smaller. I guess they could be. They're not the biggest heroes, but they're still heroes, and they're the heroes of the streets in the sense, like like they just represent that those they really represent those people that live there. And I think it showed a lot about how they embrace Kamala in this episode, like just how the community embraced her and
Jersey
love her,
protected
and
her,
that's that is their hero, because Jersey doesn't really have a lot of heroes. I don't think there is any other than Kamala.
They got the
Jersey
Jersey
Shore
Devils.
They got
Jersey Shore.
They got the Soprano family, I believe. That's about it.
But getting back to the powers, I'm right with you, Shade. Just whenever I saw her powers in the comics, it always reminded me of someone else.
Reed
Richards. And it reminded me of a lot of characters that have stretchy powers from other comics and stuff. So this version of her character with, we'll say, the crystallization and the stretchiness, it just works well because it's her uniqueness. She is able to, she doesn't have to walk. She can actually run on these lighted platforms. And
it looks cool too.
Which looks cool. And we really haven't seen her EMBIGGEN to the point where she's like this giant, because she can be really big at any point in her life. Right now, she's just, dealing with that, what I can do and what I can't do. But yeah, I love her crystallization, cosmicness, because it's unique to her. And I always felt like, man, the comics really, even though she's unique, there's always this, but she reminds me of someone else. Now she's like her own thing, and I like that.
Yeah. I'm telling you right now, my prediction right now is that in the Marvel's film next year, we're definitely going to go see her EMBIGGEN, like, pretty large. Like when we had that Captain America Civil War moment with Ant-Man, that's what I think we're going to see in the Marvels next year with Kamala, where she's just like massive and just like doing damage. And it's so cool. Like Iman Vellani, like we've spoken about her so much over the past month and a half, but what a star. Honestly, what an absolute star, and what an absolute just incredible energy to bring to the MCU, and it's like you have someone who's joining. This is her first major acting role, and now she's, I think, just so beloved, and she's instantly iconic as Kamala, and I just can't wait to see where she pops up next. The episode goes on, so after the city of Jersey protects her, I love that we get some moments between, obviously, Kamala and her dad explaining where her name comes from. Because I was like, okay, how are they going to give her the moniker of Miss Marvel? Like, because are we just going to do it where she's just like a fan of Captain Marvel and she takes it that way? But I love that there was a lot of a deeper meaning, and of course, it all comes back to family, to heritage, like to where to her family, and I just love that. And we learned that the name Kamala means like Marvel. It means like a miracle. It means
Yeah,
like
yeah, like Kamal itself is what that means, right? It's like a miracle, it's a marvel, it's a wonder.
yeah,
And it was staring me right in the face. Like I kept wondering, I'm like, how are they gonna tie this in? I'm like, oh yeah, that is what that means. Like I was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I'm so stupid. Like it was one of those moments for me. But I
But
loved it.
it was just funny to see that, and she's like, I've been named. I've shared the same name with Captain Marvel this whole time, and it goes back to her just being like this kid, just being like, this is amazing, and just being thrusted into this whole new world. And then we see that Bruno's it rolls up in a Cameron's car, and Nakia's there, and Kamala's there, and he's like, yeah, so I was looking at your like your the samples of the test that we were running earlier, and I think we got it wrong the first time. And she's like, what do you mean? And it's like, it's actually your genetics is, there's a mutation in it. And then we get that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful music cue, that and you're just like, oh shit,
Yeah,
Kamala's a mutant.
that like made me like fall out of my bed. I think I was like,
Yeah.
"What?" Like what? As soon as I heard those cues, like we heard that music cue in
Yeah.
Multiverse of Madness as well when Patrick Stewart shows up as Professor X, and then getting it here, you're just like, my God, we're doing this finally, and
We're
it's
doing it.
coming so naturally.
The
And
mutants are here.
Kamala just fits her presence in this world, and it really sets up. A lot of people might not like her being a mutant because she's considered an inhuman in the comics, but that's okay. Like, you just gotta live with some of the decisions that are made. Not everything is going to be exactly like the comics, but you're still
Right.
getting this slow tie-in to the mutant world, which we don't have yet. And I was always contemplating, like, how are they going to bring this? How are they going to bring the mutants into this world right now? And
Right.
like, Kamala is that stepping stone because it fits her character, it fits her powers, and I'm all for it. When I heard that sound, I'm like, "Oh, wait. I was like half asleep because woke up at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. to watch it. And I'm like, did I just hear the X-Men sound? And did he just say mutation? So I rewound it like
Mutation.
a couple of times, and he said it, and I heard it, and I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool because mutants, they're a New York thing too. They're a they're that area, so it just fits the
Yeah.
world that they're trying to, like, Marvel is trying to put into this, was it MCU 616 universe.
Yeah, in this universe, right?
And I'm all for it. Like, damn, I just want some mutants. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's time for the X-Men to shine because it's been for so long we haven't seen these characters that I think Disney will do a great job with, and Kamala setting that up is fantastic.
And that's the thing, right? I think this Comic-Con, we're going to see something with mutants. I think there's a reason why Miss Marvel is ending right now, a week before Comic-Con. I think we're going to maybe hopefully get some mutant announcements to see what the future of them look like in the MCU, because the Inhumans were interesting. We know they exist within the multiverse of the MCU, obviously, because we saw Black Bolt and Doctor Strange, and we're gonna get the X-Men 97 show as well too, which I'm assuming is gonna be a different universe. But it's nice that, like, when we think of like Inhumans and mutants, they're very similar, but mutants are the ones that everybody was so familiar with, right? And I'm glad that now that they're all under the Marvel banner, we'll be able to finally see them on the big screen. Shay, Any final thoughts? Let's kind of start wrapping up. Obviously, we got a great post credit scene. I'm going to get you to walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean the post credit sequence was I think what we were all hoping for, and it's again this is what I loved about this show, that a lot of the Marvel Disney Plus shows so far have always been like, are we gonna get this big character from the MCU to show up? And most of the time, like, it was our own expectations defeating ourselves of like, oh, we're gonna get Doctor Strange in WandaVision. And after watching WandaVision, after watching Multiverse of Madness, it wouldn't have made sense to kind of see Doctor Strange pop up. But in this, I was hoping we'd get to see Carol Danvers, we'd get to see Captain Marvel, we'd get to see Brie Larson. I just didn't know if they would able to be pulled off. And once that after credit sequence hit, I'm like, either they're gonna mess with us and completely make it a comedy thing and not reference it, or we're gonna get something Miss Marvel here. Something even I thought we were gonna get something akin to the ending of Infinity War with just the pager like logo icon popping up or something like that.
Yeah,
But
just something small,
just something subtle, But no, we get Kamala's bangle basically reacting to something. She transmorphs into her closet, and out pops Brie Larson, who looks great. She's got her hair back, which is awesome, and she's ready to figure. I mean, I don't know. Is it her as Kamala, or is it just her? Like it felt like there was so much kind of happening there, but man, it was really cool just to kind of see her pop up for a couple seconds.
When I saw that scene, I'm like, damn. I really thought that she for some reason turned into Kamala, but I think they switched places. Hopefully, Carol wasn't flying in space where Kamala's just floating in space at this point. No, but yeah, like that sequence, I was like, holy shit. I had to watch it a couple of times because I was like, this is so different. I did not expect this to be the way Captain Marvel is introduced. I thought Captain Marvel would just show up next to when she's on the light post, and that's where they would meet and have this communication or this relationship. But no, the whole switch was surreal because I'm like, holy shit, or did they switch places, or is she like Freaky Friday here? Is this some sort of like twist that they're going with? But love Carol Danvers' hair. I love her hair in this because I did not like her hair in Endgame, and it just was too much. I think it just sets the mood for her character, and yeah, I'm excited to see where this movie goes and where all these other characters tie into this whole universe. So pretty cool ending. I think of all the endings that we saw this year and post credit scenes, this is probably the most exciting one.
Yeah, all I want now, Anthony, is the Marvel's movie coming out to just be a reskin of Freaky Friday, but like the Lindsay Lohan, Jamie Lee Curtis version of
but
it.
they're
I just
all
want
switching
that
between
film.
the three of them.
Yeah, that's it. It's just swapping in between, and then they have to go to that Chinese restaurant and finally figure it all out. There's a wedding happening too. I want that movie now. That's all I want.
Yeah, and Vellani has to Kamala Khan has to get to a concert to perform in time. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it was awesome seeing Brie show up, and again, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, are they swapping? Are they? It looks like she just teleported somewhere else, and Brie popped in. So I'm curious to see what this is actually going to mean, and hopefully we'll get our answers very soon. Or we'll have to wait till next summer to see. But yeah, what a great ending! What a great setup for what's to come next. It's awesome, and I think Brie Larson's a great Captain Marvel, and I think now that we're going to get to see her and finally in a sequel after all these years and see her with other, Marvel-esque characters, or I guess the Marvels, it's going to be really, really cool. I'm curious though, because there was that scene with Kamala sitting on the light post. I definitely thought that was going to be a moment where is Captain Marvel going to fly down, or there was rumors as well too that Kate Bishop was going to show up in the series as well too. So I'm also glad. I also wouldn't have been upset if Captain Marvel didn't show up, because obviously this is Kamala's story, but the fact that she did is really cool. Did you guys? We didn't see who the Red Dagger's contact was in Jersey though. Which I thought was going to be maybe someone else in the MCU. I'm like, oh, is it? And in my head, because I was hearing these Kate Bishop rumors, I'm like, does Kate Bishop know like the red daggers somehow? Like, are they connected, or who's it going to be? We didn't really see who the contact was. I guess at the end of the day, it wasn't that important. But the post-credit scene was important, so I'm so glad that we got that.
I feel like that red daggers moment was akin to in WandaVision, where they're like, yeah, we have this astrophysicist coming in,
Yeah.
and that's really all that it is. Like, but it is the internet's nature to always be like with anything Marvel, like, if they're saying there is someone coming, it
Yeah.
has to be big. And I remember
Yeah.
Daniel texting you at that moment, and I'm like, it's gonna be Tony Stark,
But
obviously,
he's
because that's
but I'm like, Shay,
because
he's dead.
I'm like, that's like the anticipation that like
Yeah.
people have at this point, right? Like, it's gonna be Robert Downey Jr. that's gonna help Kamran get to Pakistan safely. Like, that is
Yeah.
the obvious answer here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how it ended. Any final thoughts on the season as a whole before we wrap up this final review episode for Miss Marvel?
I just want to say, like, this is probably my favorite Marvel series since WandaVision, and I think it's because of its simplicity and, like I said, the family dynamics, and just it had like this Nickelodeon vibe to it as well, which was fun, even for young adults, and even kids can get really into this character and not have to really get overwhelmed or hyped with the villains of the Marvel universe that might
Yeah,
show
or
up.
the
Like,
grander stakes.
it just felt perfect in just the first season of the story. Who knows where it goes from there? We know there's a movie coming out. Will there be a second season? I'm pretty sure there will be. I think Miss Marvel fits in a series aspect rather than just having her own movie, because we got so much of a story that really worked for her. But yeah, I just want to say this was probably my favorite season since WandaVision.
I love it.
Yeah, Anthony, I'm right there with you. This is my favorite show, and I mean, there's that bias of feeling that representation as well. But I think that overall, like, this show was so true to itself. That's what I loved about it. It never went beyond its means. It stuck within the grounds that made it encapsulated into something that felt like it was meant to be a TV series. Again, never went too big, which is, I mean, I guess a pun really at this point, but it always stayed within what it needed to be. Even though the show goes to Pakistan, which is 3,000 kilometers away from where we are, it still never felt like it had world-ending stakes. And what I loved about it is that the show still focused around being about family, being about heart, and it got my family together to watch it. We got together every couple days and watched the episode, and I think episode 5 really hit my family the hardest. And I can't wait to watch this next episode with them too.
I love it. I'm right there with you guys. This show is easily my favorite Marvel Studios show on Disney Plus since WandaVision. It's beautiful. It all comes back to Iman Vellani for me, and just in her performance. And the entire supporting cast is wonderful. Like Shay said, the show stays true to itself. My only complaint is that there's not more. And that's what I wish, for a lot of these shows, and especially this one. I could have easily done 10 or 12 episodes of the show, because as much as people want to get right to the big moments, and they look at other episodes, we're like, oh, this episode was boring. It's not that it's boring. It's just we're building a story, and it's like, you're not going to get the big moments right away. You want to build these characters. You want to build who they are. And the show takes the time to do that. And it does it in 6 episodes, which is a lot more than what a lot of, shows could do over 15, 20 episodes in a season. So I hope if we do come back for another season, I would love to have some more episodes and more time with just the day-to-day lives of Kamala and Bruno and Nakia and her family.
This the thing that you just mentioned, like, this show did not feel slow at all. Like, each episode was a banger, and it was paced so well. Like, you could watch Moon Knight, you could watch um, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There are episodes where they're just slower. This one, how they planned it and how they orchestrated this whole series was flawless. It was energetic from the first episode to the last, and I think that's just saying something about the creators behind this. They really
Yes.
had a vision for this character, and how they orchestrated this whole series was perfect.
Yeah, from beginning to end, the show had a style. It was dripping with that style, and it was just constantly throughout. It stayed true to that energy. And when it went emotional and went super emotional, and it landed and it resonated and it just told a beautiful story beginning to end. And I'm so happy the show was out there, and I just want to watch it from beginning to end now that it's all out. So I can't wait to do that. Thank you so much for listening to the Movie Podcast spoiler-filled discussion of the Miss Marvel finale. I'm so sad to be done talking about the show, but I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about at Comic-Con next week, so stay tuned for that. As always, you can catch a brand new episode of the Movie Podcast every single Monday, and watch out for our interviews and our reviews and all the latest movies and series throughout the week. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at the Movie Podcast. Join our Discord and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, please make sure you're subscribed, ring the notification bell, and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of this season. All those show notes are in the links below, so look out for that. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.